Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Jen and Sharon. It's another Wednesday at 10:30
We're back.
a.m. How does that happen every week? Hi, how are you, Sharon?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad to be here having coffee.
Yeah. First, before we get started with our topic for today, I think maybe our viewers might need an update on what's going on with the cat trapping situation. I think we alluded to that last time.
What's it? I don't even know what we told people.
Well, I think we had a visit with Fritz last time. I think
Yes.
Fritz was here.
So long story short is I'm a crazy woman who now is helping like collect stray kittens off the street. And since I have the orange one with me, two more siblings have been caught, one of which I caught with my bare hands, which was not so smart and which yielded me. It doesn't look so bad anymore. Just
it's looking much better. The antibiotics are doing the job.
I have antibiotics, so craziness. But
that goes under the heading of no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
Which I may or may not have told you. Someday I think I'm going to write a book with that title and just collect everybody's stories, because everybody I know has one or two or 5 or 10 of those no good deed goes unpunished stories.
And they're always funny.
And they are.
At least later.
Yes, right, later. Maybe not always at the time. So yeah, if you've got one, send me a note in the comments. I'm happy to collect. I'm going to start collecting them. So.
Absolutely. I'm a fan.
But we also want to hear from you today on another topic that we had talked about, Sharon and I had talked about, which is parenting advice. You know, there's some people who just cannot refrain from giving you advice from the moment before your child is born. Like when you're still carrying that child around, they'll tell you things and you're like, not there yet, but thanks, I'll tuck it away for another day. Sometimes that advice is really helpful, and sometimes it's and really good, and sometimes it's not that good.
You know, I think the grocery store is the #1 spot for unsolicited parenting advice about little children, at least, not about teenagers.
Yeah.
But
I got scolded. I got scolded by somebody because my baby didn't have a hat on in the grocery store.
Oh, socks too. I definitely have heard that.
Like, have you ever met a baby that keeps the hat and the socks on? No, it comes off the second you go anywhere. I mean, there's a trail of baby socks on this planet because no baby will keep them on.
Don't you know, Jen, how many babies have lost their toes to frostbite in grocery stores?
In the grocery store. Yes. It's the #1 world problem, I think.
Actually, this reminds me of maybe the worst parenting advice I ever did receive was in a grocery store. I had my 2 older children who were about, I don't know, maybe 1 and 3, something like that, sitting very quietly in the cart for once. You know, I don't know how I had them set up, but they were in the cart and not doing anything crazy. And this woman comes over to me, and an older woman, and says conspiratorially to me, "Don't have any more. Stop.
What?
Yes.
Oh,
can you imagine?
Well, I have a feeling that your third child might have something to say about that.
Well, you know, I said to her, I said, well, I hope you don't have 3 children. And that was the end of that. So
you just don't know what people are thinking.
Sometimes. I don't know.
So anyway, you know, sometimes we can shrug that advice off or laugh it off, and sometimes we listen to it and then later we're like, well, that was dumb. I should have made up my own mind on that one. But so tell me, what's the worst piece of parenting advice you've come across in the teen years?
Well, I think that just generically, I feel like you hear this a lot, and it comes out of a place of frustration, I think, more than, and it's not necessarily directed at me personally, but it's kind of in the ether. People will say, I need help. My kid is not behaving. They're not doing their work or whatever it might be. And a lot of times those people will get advice to just go ballistic on that kid. You know, just like take everything away, take all their belongings out of their room, take their phone away, only give them food and water and a mattress on the floor, or send them away to boarding school. Now, clearly there are some kids who really have difficulties, this oppositional defiant disorder. And, some kids have a lot of issues that make parenting them hard. But the blanket advice to just go crazy on your kid is, I don't think, good advice at all.
Yeah.
But I understand it comes from a place of like helplessness and that desire for control, because part of the hardest part of having teenagers is feeling like you don't have that control anymore.
Yeah, you do lose some of that control. And there is a school of parenting thought out there which is sort of focused on, well, you're the parent, you be the parent, you make sure they do what you tell them to do. And if you think that that's happening behind your back and when they're not with you, you're wrong. You're mistaken, because they have many ways of circumventing your authority.
Yeah, and just well, a lot of times this comes out on the internet as be the parent.
Yeah,
Be the parent. Just be the parent. Be a parent. Stop asking for advice. Just make it happen.
Yeah,
and it's just not always that easy.
It's not. It's really not. I'm with you on that one. Okay, so on the flip side, is there a good piece of parenting advice?
Why don't you share one? I feel like you're interviewing me. You share.
That's true. Yeah, I'm putting you under the microscope here. Okay, well, all right. I did think about this a little bit, and I think the piece of parenting advice that I most didn't like when my kids were teenagers was the idea that they need to be involved in a leadership role in something. This is something you'll hear a lot from various places, maybe even their guidance counselor at school or other well-meaning parents. There's this idea that, especially if they're looking toward college, that they need to have something on their resume that shows that they increased their leadership role within a club or an organization.
Right.
I don't espouse that idea. If it happens organically, I think it's fabulous. It's wonderful. If you've got a kid who wanted to be the person in charge of the environmental club and they took the reins, not a problem at all. But if you don't happen to have that kid, there is nothing wrong with it. And there are so many other great qualities your kid is learning by pursuing whatever it is that they're interested in.
Right.
Like I have a kid who, just as an example, one of her happiest things is sewing. She really enjoyed sewing. That's a very solo endeavor.
Yeah.
There probably was a sewing club she could join, but that wasn't what she wanted. She wanted to learn and create kind of one-on-one with her teacher. And she developed this rich, fabulous relationship with this nice older woman who was like a second grandparent to her. There was no leadership involved in this, but I would never have said to her, don't do that, do this instead, because you need to show that you're developing leadership. That would have really robbed her of a fantastic opportunity to explore her creativity. So I'm glad that I listened to my intuition on that and thought, it doesn't really matter if they do or don't have a quote unquote leadership position. And I felt really validated by that when I was at a college information session, and one of the leaders, at this college said, I know you've probably heard that your students should all be in debate club or that they should be rising the ranks of whatever they're in. He said, do you think that I want to have a college filled with leaders? That would be awful. If everybody was a leader, that would be terrible. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad that they get it,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I like to think about it as like, just let them follow their bliss. It's okay if it's not what you had in mind is like what's going to look good on their college resume. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure from the whole college scene and application. And what we've learned from our work on that, in our destination college and all our year teen work on college preparations, that has actually been really helpful, is that there are, it's more about finding the college for your child than trying to make your kid like everybody else and to meet a certain list of criteria that somebody has decided are the best, and so they can go to the best colleges. So I think that's really wise, Jen. You have a lucky kid.
Yes, well, she's a great kid too, and what this has really paid off. It's all about me, as you know, and oftentimes she has been able to mend or even make things for me. So that's really that's the most important part of that story.
No, I have a pile of mending. I should.
I'm sure she
need to assign that to one of my children.
Okay, so now on the flip side, anything good that,
Yeah. Yeah.
nugget?
This is kind of two-pronged. But it's both about asking questions of our kids, and that we don't always need to tell our kids things. We can ask questions so that they get a chance to respond. And there's really two separate ways that I've heard that advice that I found it's very helpful. One is when we're trying to get our kids to become more independent and be more responsible for their things. You know, if we think we know they have a big exam coming up and we don't see the preparation happening, or we know that whatever it might be, we should ask the child, how do you think you're going to handle this? Or if they come home with a dilemma with a friend or something, instead of jumping in with advice, to say, oh, that sounds really hard. What do you think you're going to say to her tomorrow? Like to give the kid a chance to think for themselves. And the other aspect of that is when we're trying to share our values with our kids. You know, they know what our values are. We don't need to lecture them. We can ask them, well, what do you think about this, you know, this issue that's in the news or whatever it might be? And they often will have thoughtful responses, and they have talked to, they're hearing from other kids at school. They might bring up things we hadn't thought of. But we don't need to say, you're wrong. When you ask them what they think, you'll get a chance to say your piece. You know,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
They'll still hear you, and lecturing doesn't make it that, you know, you can't mold your kids by telling them what they should think.
They probably already know how you think, right?
They know what you think, and
they might think you're wrong, by the way. Just a possibility.
They might, but they might also, you know, they might also be more willing to listen to what you have to say. You know, if you disagree with your kid about whatever it might be, and you ask them what they think first, well, then you don't get the hackles up, the defenses, like, stop telling me what to do. Like, once you've had a chance to hear them, they're more likely to listen to what you have to say. So I think that's advice that I have gotten from somewhere about asking more questions that I think has been really helpful.
Yeah, asking questions is really great. So wait, so does this mean when my kids say, how long should I put this in the microwave for? Should I say, well, what do you think?
I do usually say that first.
I've been trying. I do try that more often because I'm like, that's such a low stakes thing. I mean, really, what could go wrong? If you put it in for 30 seconds versus 45 seconds, how bad is it going to be, right? And now if they put it in for 30 minutes instead of 30 seconds, that could be a problem. But
I don't hear this one as much anymore, but I used to see, how do you spell such and such? And my response, which they're probably going to make fun of me at a roast at some point, like, well, what do you think it starts with? You know, we start with where can we begin on this?
Where can we begin? Oh, you are a tough nut, Sharon. Wow.
Oh, I don't think that's so tough.
Maybe my answer would probably be these days, I really don't know. Because I used to be such a good speller and now I'm not, because the squiggly line on my computer tells me when it's wrong. And then I fix it. So, you kind of unwittingly took my good piece of advice too.
Did I? It must be really good then.
It must be really good.
We heard the same thing. What is it?
The way I was going to phrase it is, you know, when your kid comes to you with an issue, you don't need to jump into problem solving mode immediately. Kind of the same thing, which is so sounds pretty simple, but it's so hard to do because we really just want to fix it. And sometimes we really think we know this is what you should do to fix it.
Yeah. Yeah, for
sure. The other thing is to recognize that sometimes they aren't asking even for our advice on how to do it. They really do just want to tell you they had a lousy day. And the only good response is, oh man, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. You want to go to Starbucks, you know, like offer food. That's my best advice. Offer food when in doubt. Food is comfort. Or whatever you think it is that they, you know, that would help them feel loved in that moment. So
yeah,
that's it. That's all I got.
Well, I want to share. I have one more that I do want to share because
you can have an extra.
What?
You can have an extra.
I want to because, you know, when I think about these good advice things, I think, you know, everybody should know this. It feels so good to hear this. But one is, and I don't remember where I heard this, is to express confidence to your kids that they're going to be okay. So even if you're upset with them about something they did wrong, or they're really struggling with depression or something, or they are, I don't know, anything there that's not going well, if you phrase it as I know you're going to be okay. We will get through this. You made a mistake. You're having a hard time. When you're going to be an adult in a few years, and we're going to look back on this as a hard time. But like sometimes I think they worry if they're going to be okay. And they need us to know they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Even if we don't feel it, we've got to try, because if we don't believe our kids will be okay, then how can they? That would be.
Yes. That's well said. And to remind them, it's not always going to be this way. Whatever you're feeling right now, you're not going to always feel this way. That was something else. I remember a good piece of advice tangential to that is to say something along the lines of, do you think, are you going to feel the same way you feel about this 2 days from now?
Maybe, but maybe not.
Right.
Yeah.
And to say, do you think you're going to feel this bad about it if we talk about this in 2 days, and kind of try to give a little perspective on that. Like, yes, a lot of these emotions feel really bad in that moment, but it's not going to be that way forever. So,
well,
in that perspective, I guess.
Well, viewers, please feel free to add your best advice or worst advice you've heard, because we're always looking for good advice, or a laugh, or tell us what not to do.
Right. Maybe what not to do.
Maybe we're screwing stuff up that we shouldn't be.
That could be instructive too. Let us learn from your mistakes.
Oh boy.
Well, have a good week, everybody, and we will see you back here next Wednesday.
Sounds great, everyone. Bye.